Hello children, today we will read the chapter Night Witches. Night Witches by Megan Garber. It was the spring of 1943 at the height of World War II. Two pilots, members of the Soviet Air Force, were flying their planes, Polikarpov PO-2, built mainly of plywood and canvas, over a Soviet railway junction. Their passage was on its way to being a routine patrol until the pilots found themselves face to face with a collection of German bombers, 42 of them. So the story takes us back to the year 1943 during World War II. Soviet Air Force means Russian Air Force. Two pilots of Russian Air Force were flying their planes. The planes they were flying were very weak and thin. They were made of plywood and canvas, means that they were very weak and thin. Patrol means to take a round of the area to see that there is no trouble. Pilots were on their routine patrol when they saw 42 German fighter pilots in bombers in front of them. The pilots did what anyone piloting a plane made of plywood would do when faced with enemy aircraft and enemy fire. They ducked. They sent their planes into dives, shooting back directly into the center of the German group. The tiny planes' flimsiness was in some ways an advantage. Their maximum speed was lower than the stall speed of the Nazi planes, meaning that the pilots could maneuver their aircraft much more quickly and easily than their attackers. The outnumbered Soviets downed two Nazi planes before one of their own lost its wing to enemy fire. The pilot escaped, landing finally in a field. So the pilots of Russian Air Force had greater control over their lighter planes than the enemies with their swift fighter planes. Russian pilots could also fly them like gliders much lower. Flimsiness means weakness and thinness. So Russian pilots were at an advantage from the German fighters because of the light weight of their planes. They could easily move or turn their planes in a controlled manner. Maneuver. Maneuver means to move or turn in a skillful and controlled manner. The Russians were able to shoot down two German bombers before one of their own planes was damaged, and the pilot landed in a field. The people on the ground who had witnessed the short fight rushed over to help the pilot. They offered alcohol, but the offer was refused. As the pilot would later recall, nobody could understand why the brave lad who had taken on a Nazi squadron wouldn't drink vodka. So the people who were watching the fight rushed to help the pilot as soon as the pilot landed in a field. They were very impressed with the pilot's bravery and offered him a drink. A squadron. Squadron means a team of aircrafts and the men who fly them, who fly those planes. Lad means a young man. Lad means a young man. So the people were very surprised when the pilot refused the offer. What they do not realize was that the pilot was a woman. This incident shows that people expected only men to be fighting in a war. The brave lad, it turned out, was not a lad at all. It was Tamara Pamyatnik, one of the members of the 588th Night Bomber Regiment of the Soviet Air Forces. The 588th was the most highly decorated female unit in that force, flying 30,000 missions over the course of 4 years and dropping in total 23,000 tons of bombs on invading German armies. Its members, who ranged in age from 17 to 26, flew mainly at night, making do with planes that were, per their plywood and canvas construction, generally reserved for training and crop dusting. They often operated in quiet secrecy, running their engines slowly as they neared their targets and then gliding their way to their bomb release points. As a result, their planes made little more than soft whooshing noises as they flew by. So, the lady who was flying that fighter plane was Tamara Pamyatnik, one of the members of the 588th Night Bomber Regiment of the Soviet Air Force. The 588th was the most highly decorated female unit in the Soviet Air Force. Decorated means that unit had got so many awards. It flew 30,000 missions and dropped 23,000 tons of bombs in 4 years. The members were young, aged 17 to 26, incredibly brave, and quite unique in history. They generally used to fly at night. These planes were made for training and crop dusting purpose. Crop dusting means to spray chemicals on the crops from air to kill the insects. So because they were made basically for training and crop dusting, so they were not very strong and they could fly low, silently glide down on enemy targets, drop bombs and fly away. The planes used to make a slow swooshing sound only which could hardly be heard. Those noises reminded the Germans, apparently, of the sound of a witch's broomstick. So the Nazis began calling the female fighter pilots Nathexen, night witches. They were hated and they were feared. Any German pilot who downed a witch was automatically awarded an Iron Cross. So the swooshing sound of those planes reminded Germans of the witch broomstick, so they began calling the pilots night witches. Germans were scared of these pilots and used to hate them. The German pilots who killed those brave Russian pilots were awarded with the Iron Cross, which was a German military award for bravery. The night witches were largely unique among the female fighters and even the female flyers of World War II. Other countries, the US among them, may have allowed women to fly as members of their early air forces. Those women, however, served largely in support and transport roles. The Soviet Union was the first nation to allow women to fly combat missions, to be able, essentially, to return fire when it was delivered. These ladies flew planes, they also dropped bombs. So these Russian women fighter pilots were the first in the world to be engaged in combat like man fighter pilots. Combat means missions where they were supposed to drop bombs on enemies' armies. In other countries, the women pilots served as transport pilots and in other such supportive roles. So that's all for today, children. Remaining part of the chapter we will cover in the next video. Thank you.